Hello, everyone. Hope all are well. Um, we will be starting in 2 minutes. Just want to give 2 minutes time for people to log in, and then we will start in 2 minutes. As we are waiting for folks to join in, I will encourage everyone, if you would like to introduce yourself in the chat box, that will be wonderful. Hi, Samia. Hi, Jenna.
See Sean, nice to see him. See Orla over in South Africa too. Nice to see you. See lots of names. That's exciting. Alice from Montreal.
Yeah. Okay,
Nice.
welcome everyone. So we will start now. It's sharp at 1:02 Eastern, and welcome to the fourth episode of our captivating interview series, Leadership Under Fire. Today, we venture into the brave world of leadership within international higher education, national organizations. It is wonderful to so many of you around the globe joining us today. My name is Arif Abu, your host for this virtual exploration of leadership challenges and triumphs. Before we proceed with today's session, I would like to offer a land acknowledgement. This acknowledgement is neither a thank you for your real estate nor a checkbox. Rather, it serves as a personal reminder of my complex relationship with this land and settler colonialism. I also affirm my solidarity with land back movement. We acknowledge that the lands on which Memorial University's campuses are situated are in the traditional territories of diverse indigenous groups, and we acknowledge with respect the histories and cultures of Beothuk, Mi'kmaq, Innu, and Inuit of this province. We encourage everyone to reflect on the lands where you are located and the indigenous peoples for whom these lands are traditional territory. Today, we have the privilege of highlighting leaders who spearhead IHE movements within their national organization. We have Dorothy Antonio as the Deputy Executive Director of Knowledge Development of NAFSA, Dr. Jose Carlos Ferre Jr., President of FAUBAI, and Dr. Laverne Samuels, President of IEASA. Today's discussion promises to be both enlightening and thought-provoking. Whether you are a seasoned leader, an aspiring change maker, or someone curious about dynamics of IHE National Organization leadership, you are for a treat. I'm grateful for the support I have received in organizing this event from Dr. Samia Chasi, Dr. Fantao, and Dr. Santiago Castello. Thank you, and thank you. Before we dive into this moderated conversation, I would like to invite Vinita Gangatharan for her opening remarks. Although Vinita does not require an introduction, a little bit about her. Vinita is a skilled administrator with over 20 years of experience and expertise in international relations and education, student affairs and services, and not-for-profit board governance and policy. Her dedication to IHE stems from a deep belief in the transformative power of education. Vinita is committed to fostering a growth and excellence mindset, creating access to opportunities for young people, and nurturing a positive culture that helps them develop into the best version of themselves. So without further delay, Vinita, mic is yours.
Thank you so much, Arif, and thank you for inviting me to provide some remarks. on the important role of national international higher education organizations in reimagining the field of international education, especially during these very difficult times that we find ourselves in. I'll share an institutional perspective on the crucial role that international higher education organizations play, as well as the relationship that institutions should have in advancing an inclusive, ethical, and sustainable international education ecosystem. Obviously, I think all of us here know that scholars consider internationalization to be one of the key drivers facing modern universities and a major force impacting and shaping higher education globally in the 21st century, and more recently, not all of it for the better. Higher education institutions worldwide, including Canada, are rapidly adopting internationalization strategies, and not necessarily with a lot of thought in many cases, but are really trying hard to, I think, reflect their institutional values and enhance their research and scholarship, teaching, learning, service, and capacity building. We know certainly that global challenges such as climate change, access to healthcare, the impact of technology, trade and economic integration, and concerning trends such as exclusionary nationalism, xenophobia, polarization, and inequality highlight the need for universities to contribute to finding innovative solutions more than ever, while we're increasingly not top of mind to governments or even the public. These urgent challenges, the UN Sustainable Development Goals also highlight the important roles universities can play in creating societal impact and the contributions they can make towards making the world a better place. In 2024, global collaboration across different sectors is more critical than ever. Issues such as the ongoing pandemic, war, geopolitical turmoil are disrupting higher education. These disruptions are also causing a shift in the international education landscape, with the growing emphasis on the Asia Pacific and African regions. These areas not only have the fastest growing student populations, but also have historically been underserved by higher education. The global number of students enrolled in higher education has more than doubled since 2000 and is projected to reach 380 million by 2030. This rapid expansion presents an opportunity and a responsibility to ensure equitable development of the education ecosystem. It's essential for the Global North to collaborate and support the vision that Global South has determined for themselves, and to support this growth sustainably and equitably. We are in a pivotal moment for higher education. National organizations and networks are crucial in assisting, advising, and advocating for post-secondary institutions and in bridging the gap between civil society, government, industry, and higher education. In today's dynamic environment, I think institutions need to partner with national organizations and multilateral institutions as they provide the necessary forums for discussions on developing collaborative, evidence-based, ethical, and sustainable global engagement. This in turn helps institutions build the capacity and leadership needed to react to changing economic and geopolitical conditions and proactively shape an equitable education landscape. National organizations, as we know, traditionally facilitate cross-border collaborations, help set global standards for education quality, and provide principles for ethical standards and practices for international education, for professionals, student mobility, and partnership development. Institutions, on the other hand, are facing significant challenges and internal pressures, including in the areas of quality assurance and accreditation, fiscal difficulties, changing regulatory and policy frameworks, access issues, offshore, learning how to deliver offshore, changing delivery modes, geopolitical tensions, as I've mentioned before, sustainability in international education, health and safety, national security, and institutional capacity to manage these difficult challenges. National organizations and international higher ed organizations, I think, play a role to bring stakeholders together to address these challenges collectively when uncertainty, to me, remains the only certainty. In today's resource-constrained environment, institutions must collaborate and share resources to build internal capacity and internationally at scale. And I think scale is really important, and where international higher education providers can really help bridge the gap with institutions. Professional development is also crucial. While international education organizations have previously provided this, but we are in very difficult and challenging times, and we must set more of an example and set guidelines and principles around ethical standards and practices, and particularly in addressing unscrupulous practices in service providers. With the growing number of global conflicts, increasingly polarized political shifts, and the rise of insular governments, person-to-person ties with institutions around the world are the only ways, or one of the ways, in which we can foster intercultural understanding. And the international education professionals and organizations are essential to maintaining the stability of the global order and the sector. Universities can rely upon one another for support, pool resources, and sustain these dialogue in times of upheaval or political isolation when other civil society sectors may be reluctant. This importance can be seen in Canada in the relationships that we've built with Ukrainian institutions since the beginning of the war, the continued dialogue between Canadian universities and their Indian counterparts since the breakdown in Indo-Canadian relations, and how institutions have supported Brazilian partners through the Bolsonaro regime. But we still have much work to do, as we have not, in Canada anyway, I'll speak for that, not always responded quickly or readily to many situations elsewhere in the world, in Afghanistan, Yemen, or Somalia, and many more. The Canadian Bureau of International Education has been instrumental, and Universities Canada have been instrumental in supporting the current Canadian context through advocacy to governments and policymakers. They've also been intermediary in sharing information with institutions. In practical terms, they've corralled the sector together weekly at times to make the sector more unified in our approach and understanding. We've also witnessed what happens when governments act alone, particularly ours, without engaging the sector or the national bodies. Fiscal pressures often can lead us to want to engage institutions in particular, wanting to engage directly or to make choices about memberships to these organizations. But staying connected to these national organizations is crucial to the survival of the sector. In an increasingly interconnected and complex world, decision-making and collaboration across borders is vital to humanity. Institutions and their national and international higher education organizations need to continue to come together to address these challenges. And I especially want to thank all the organizations that are here today for the role that they play. We've certainly seen the role that NAFSA and IEASA and others have played during political turmoil in their countries, and also I've been in the field for almost 20 years, and I've definitely seen a coming together of the national sector bodies internationally and meeting of the sister organizations and like-minded individuals. Just even how different it's been since post-pandemic. The level of collaboration, I feel, has increased with these organizations, and I hope that remains. But I worry that fiscal pressures will see a decline in memberships and the opportunities to bring us together. So I will leave it there, and I look forward to the conversation with our expert panelists.
Thank you so much, Vinita, for your wonderful remark. International higher education is going through a critical time, particularly in Canada. We are experiencing that, and we are so thankful for your leadership on that. So now I would like to introduce the moderator of today's session, the on and only Dr. Sonia Kunistan. Dr. Kunistan, as the is the director of the Internationalization Office of Memorial University of Newfoundland. Dr. Kunistan leads a team dedicated to advancing Memorial University's internationalization initiatives. She is also an active researcher, writer, and a presenter in the field of international higher education, with extensive knowledge and experience in the post-secondary environment, both locally and globally. Dr. Kunistan is well versed in current trending issues such as indigenization, internationalization, entrepreneurship, healthy campus initiative, and postgraduate career outcomes. So without further ado, let's dive into the world of national leadership under fire.
Thank you so much, Arif, for pulling this session together. I think we're going to really enjoy ourselves through this time. And I want to thank Vinitha very much for providing that institutional point of view. I certainly resonated with so many parts of what you said myself. And setting up the context for this conversation and why we rely on our national organizations and how they are really so critical for us. And just to let you know, Celso from FAUBAI should be with us, but has been unavoidably delayed. So hopefully we'll be able to join in. But I do want to introduce Dorothea Antonio, really dear friend, someone that I've known for many years and who has brought me on to different initiatives with NAFSA and really gotten to know NAFSA quite well as an organization. And if you're not aware, I'm sure you are, but if you aren't, NAFSA itself is the national organization in the US that advocates for the international education sector in the US and holds the very largest conference there in every year at the NAFSA conference annually, which I believe is in San Diego next year. And I believe that if you're interested in submitting a proposal, that you may also do that. And another dear friend, Laverne Samuels from IEASA, their conference is coming up this next month. A wonderful conference. If you've never been to the IEASA conference, it's one that truly feeds you as an international education. I find the sessions are very rich. And in particular from the Canadian context with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, there are pieces of overlap between what we do in Canada and the South African approach that I really learn a huge amount from. So really thrilled to have Laverne here today representing. So we're going to dive into a couple of questions. In recent years, significant challenges have been faced by internationally focused higher education organizations, such as your own, NAFSA and IEASA. And as due to global issues, sometimes due to national issues, can each of you, I'm hoping you can discuss a specific challenge that your organization has faced over the past few years and how you addressed it and what lessons did you learn from this experience? So in this one, we're going to actually start with Dorothea. So I will turn the floor over to you to respond.
Sure, and thank you so much, Sonia, and thank you to all for the invitation, and so pleased to be able to have the opportunity to chat with you all today. I also bring you greetings from Fanta Off, our CEO, who's currently traveling right now in New Zealand, having great conversations there related to internationalization and indigenization there. So thank you again. Related to your first question, Sonia, and listened intently to what Vinitha presented, and I thought, well, she said it so expertly. I am going to echo many of those things because they ring very true for NAFSA, and that should be no surprise to all, but I will repeat many of the points that you brought up, Vinitha. First of all, I would be remiss if I didn't say that navigating geopolitics is one issue that organizations are increasingly facing and are going to continue to face. We know that the great global challenges of our future are going to require collaboration. At NAFSA, we know that the U.S. must remain engaged with and learn from the world. And I say that because I say that to say that the global challenges are not going to be one and done. We're going to have to be committed to staying the course. So when we talk about challenges moving forward, we are in this for the long term, and I think developing our strategies together will be the solution. The increased polarization, the rise in anti-immigrant sentiments in much of the world have influenced restrictions on entries. They've privileged entries from many places in the world. So I can say at NAFSA, initiatives such as the Simon Bill, the U.S. for Success Coalition, are some of the initiatives that we are advocating for in collaboration with many other colleagues. They will continue to be challenges for us that we'll prepare to face together. I would say also that advancing multidirectional mobility is really important to us. And so to that end, we're going to be focused on the quality of student exchanges, increasing support for faculty development, advocating support for faculty development, professional development for our members, promoting sustainable global internationalization partnerships. So talk about lessons learned and challenges we face, Sonia, right? As an International Higher Education Association, we've learned that we cannot go it alone. We value greatly our relationship with our sister associations, my colleagues on this panel. It's critical that we engage with you all moving forward, whether there are fiscal constraints or not. As Vinitha mentioned, it's important for us. It's vitally important for us. Not only that, it's critical that we engage with many other stakeholders in higher education, in government, in the business community, civil society, and others. And so for NAFSA, those will be our keys moving forward. And that's what we've learned coming out of the pandemic and facing the challenges that we went through, that the only solution is together and the path forward is together. And we intend to seriously represent that.
Thank you so much, Dorothea. Laverne, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sonia. I'd like to firstly thank the organizers for this invitation and to also express my delight being amongst so many friends in participating in this event. So I'd like to perhaps raise the issue of the inequities that we have in higher education and higher education internationalization as one of the challenges that IEASA faced. A few years ago, we had the promulgation of our first national framework for internationalization, and that was a very broad document. Of course, COVID came soon after, and we were not able to really unpack it as fully as we had planned to. However, when we looked at it, we realized that some universities were prepared for the unfolding of this strategy or this framework, and others had far more challenges in terms of capacity, in terms of resources. So IEASA as an organization engaged in a number of activities that addressed it. One was a mentorship program where we prepared young colleagues for more senior roles and for understanding the full potential, the transformative potential of internationalization. And this has been running now for a few years, and we are finding this mentor-mentee relationship yielding significant benefits and building capacity in offices that perhaps needed a little nudge in the right direction. But it's also the nature of our conference, I think, that has been shaped by our national framework on internationalization. We have a series of workshops at our conference and some that run in the course of the year, and we deal with issues around inclusive internationalization, comprehensive internationalization. So as a country, we are not able to send large numbers of students abroad. So our brand of internationalization had to be one that was more inclusive. And, the figures speak for themselves. Europe, which has the best funded mobility program in the world, has never reached beyond 25% mobility. And actually, that has dropped significantly after COVID. In the US, that figure is between 5 and 7%, and it has also dropped after COVID. In Africa, that figure is under 1%. So our commitment to this inclusive form of internationalization is a commitment to the other 99%. And we have had a particular focus on internationalization of the curriculum. In South Africa, a number of workshops, a number of activities. We also have started increasingly using the virtual space, and a number of universities have been involved in COIL and international virtual engagement, and IEASA has put on a number of workshops to capacitate individuals that are working towards this, so that student mobility still remains an important part of internationalization, but an adjunct to other forms of internationalization that can be more inclusive. We also have, I think, played a role. We've heard about the contestation and the conflict in the world. We've heard about the geopolitical shifts, and IEASA has played a particular role in terms of democratizing internationalization, taking on issues like decolonization of the curriculum. And I think our social justice underpinnings and representing a global South perspective is a very important one. And of course, we align with a new definition for internationalization that Samia, Chasi, and Savo-Helita have come up with. And so our contribution has really been about driving internationalization so that it reaches its full potential, supporting institutions, our membership, to become more active in forms of internationalization that can be more inclusive. And I suppose the lesson for us is that there isn't one brand or form of internationalization that can actually be advocated for all our members, and that we have to look at that diversity, the smorgasbord of options in internationalization, and increasingly engage in these and help build capacity towards involvement in different forms of internationalization.
Thank you so much, Laverne. And unfortunately, Celso hasn't been able to join from FAUBAI, but I did want to just mention, many of you probably know from the past 10 years or so, watching Brazil, being engaged with Brazil, and how with FAUBAI, they've, were suddenly had the Students for Science Without Borders, imposed upon them by the government, but it was, seen, or it was supposed to be a very positive thing, where you're sending lots of Brazilian students out around the world, and there was all of a sudden huge influx of Brazilian students going to different countries, and lots of scrambling by FAUBAI to support and get people up to speed to be able to do that. And then a sudden shift in government with Bolsonaro, and a complete change in how internationalization was viewed. And suddenly much of the work of FAUBAI was suddenly scaled back, dialed down, and they continued to work through that. And now, back to under Lula government, back to more openness. But again, just lots going on in Brazil through that time, and supporting the organizations. I know from my colleagues in Brazil how much they appreciated FAUBAI, and how much they appreciated, through the sort of the opening of Brazil, then the closing and the reopening, that they have appreciated. I know the continued engagement of the various other higher education organizations as well as their institutional partners. Let's go on to the second question. And Laverne, I'll ask you to speak first to this one. Institutions from the global north frequently engage, as you know, in international activities such as recruitment, research, mobility, partnerships for an economic rationale. How is your organization fostering equitable partnerships focused on other types of rationales, I could say, among institutions in the Global South? And how are you promoting a more balanced approach to South-North academic collaborations? So Laverne, over to you.
Sonia, thank you for that question. I think the answer I gave to my first question is an ideal segue into this one, because I spoke about inclusive, comprehensive internationalization, and that's the brand of internationalization that we are promoting. And yes, we do work with international mobility. The Erasmus program, for example, has a special pot of funding for South Africa. So we work with a number of European countries on mobility programs. But equally, we work in areas like virtual engagement. We've had our members within IEASA partner in this. We've had 5 of our members partner in a project called equitable, where 5 South African universities work with 5 European universities. So we were able to have South-South collaborations and North-South relations. And this sort of trilateral arrangement has worked well with us. And we have a number of organizations that do exactly that. I look at SANORD, for example, which is the Southern African Nordic Center, where at least 20 IEASA members are also members within SANORD. And SANORD consists of roughly 30 Southern African universities and 30 Nordic universities. So there is potential for North-South relations as well as South-South relations. And it's also about taking a global South perspective forward. Internationalization can quite easily be about allowing a dominant paradigm to prevail. And IEASA has played a very important role in promoting a global South perspective, the needs of the global South, the perspectives of the global South, the contribution of the global South, looking at indigenous knowledge. We also are increasingly having an Africa focus in our work. There are 10 South African universities that are part of an Africa-focused partnership project, where for the next 3 years, we will be looking at our Africa footprint. But even within the virtual space, we ensure that we don't leave behind South-South collaborations. I'm part of an organization called IVEC, the International Virtual Exchange Consortium, where we look at virtual exchange and COIL. And it's something that started in the US, spread initially to Europe, and we started engaging in it. We, for example, have a project called Encompassing All Voices and Emerging Voices, where we bring in global South universities and regions, and we build capacity and ensure that the South-South collaborations are actually promoted. So to summarize, I think one is about the diversity of our international education activities, choosing from this broad range that I described earlier. And secondly, is making very conscious decisions about how you engage within different organizations to ensure that it's not just about mobility, it's not just about research driven by the global North. And I'd like to perhaps at this point talk about how important it is for us to shape a research agenda together, and not to have a research agenda that is dominated by a particular region. And IEASA has been very strong about this in looking at equity in our engagements. And we also work very collaboratively with our sister organizations to ensure that we have this type of diverse engagement, and issues like inclusion and equity and diversity are discussed at the very highest levels, including at the network of international education associations that, most international education associations present here today are part of. So yes, it is exactly what Dorothea meant. It's about working together, about joining hands in addressing these challenges together, so that we don't have domination, but in fact we have collaboration.
I've noticed that South Africa and Canada are working together on developing research portfolio. And so your comments about, who is managing that research agenda are very, very timely. And I mentioned to Laverne before we started, but I'll mention here again that Memorial is sending its Associate Vice President Research Indigenous, a mouthful for a title, to IEASA this year, Dr. Paul Banaheen Ajay. And he's originally from Ghana, but he works here at Memorial University. And I'm really hopeful that that type of engagement, that's sending people to work in South Africa who have a mindset of, truth and reconciliation and those pieces and equity, diversity, inclusion, that will hopefully start to improve this way that we can approach research, so that the research isn't, as you said, driven by one country's a particular agenda in the West. Thank you, Laverne. Dorothy.
Sure. Thank you, Laverne. I was thinking, even with your earlier comments, another lessons learned for us is the importance of interrogation of definitions, right? Who defines internationalization? Under what context are we defining it? What is inclusivity? These are ethereal terms, but they're really important. And the more we engage globally, the more important it is to continue to do that, and to never be content that this is the definition forever, and to be comfortable with that, I think, is really important. And for all of us as international educators to lead by that, and always be willing to re-examine it even amongst ourselves, because it will be important for our students as we model it to them. As an organization based in the global north, NAFSA knows we have a lot to learn from our colleagues in the global south, and we value tremendously our relationships with them, including Laverne and Jose Celso. If you were here, I would say that, and others on this call as well. We know we need to listen more. We know we need to do our part to expand voices in the field, for us to expand voices in all that we produce, expand opportunities to enable more voices is something we know we can do from the global north perspective. If, for example, we're talking about our conference, those are things we take very seriously and are always open to suggestions from others about how to continue to do that, how to engage in conversations where there is a wide viewpoint, a range of views. We had Laverne was our keynote speaker. Thank you to Laverne. 2 years ago, in a symposium on leadership we did at our annual conference, and it was very much about this. It was about global definitions of internationalization. It was looking at indigenous internationalization and the like. Laverne can provide you more information far better than I can, but I say things like that are things that we will do at NAFSA and continue to do in terms of promoting the global space to have conversations. We are a membership organization. Obviously, we are an individual membership organization, so we will do our best to continue to encourage and inspire our members in the member community in terms of their interaction, in terms of providing spaces for learning, spaces for training, spaces, sharing thought leadership, sharing training opportunities. We always aim to provide a diverse range of programs and tools and resources. We will continue to listen and learn from others in the field to know what we are missing, what we might be changing, so that we're always considering issues of equity and access. And that is very, very important to us, and that comes straight from the top. And we're very comfortable with that, and we continue to go that way. We also know the power of storytelling. We produce a lot of thought leadership and books and publications and the like. We're very committed to that. One example I'll mention is that we recently published a book on the UN SDGs called Global Goals, Global Education. But what I wanted to mention was that it was unique for us in that it had 16 chapters, 7 of which were from Global South voices, 9 of which were Global North, and only 3 of those were US. So it was very global in perspective sharing. And those are the kinds of things we want to continue to do in terms of providing opportunities for voices around the world to enrich the conversations, enrich the dialogues, and all that we can do, we will continue to do in that regard. I'll stop right there, but happy during the questions
That's
and
great.
answers if people have any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Dorothea. That's really, really great. And I do see we have some questions coming in. We'll hold them to the question period as we have one more question for you to address. But certainly, we could spend a great deal of time just in this one area around, equitable partnerships and fostering that between institutions in the Global North and Global South. But the third question that I'll have you address, and Dorothea, I'll ask you to go first. What key leadership skills are essential for managing a national internationalization of higher education organization? What kind of support do these organizations need from the academic institution and the people that work in the academic institution? What do you need from the government, and what do you need from civil society?
How much time do you have, and how much are we going to channel this into results? Would be my quick answer. But I'll start with important skills. That should not be surprising to anyone, but I think as a community, the more we can articulate it, the better, because they are valuable. Things like resilience and flexibility. I don't think I need to convince anyone who's listening the importance of that, but that truly in our field, we can be exemplars of that. A high tolerance for ambiguity, I would say. This field is going to continue to change. The world is going to continue to change. Our ability to roll with that, to respond, react, but continue moving forward with that will be more important than ever. And again, that's another skill that we like to ensure that our students come away from their international experiences with. Cultural competence and communication skills, more critical than ever. Listening skills, more critical than ever. Curiosity and a high appetite for learning. I'm pausing to let these sink in because I'm rattling them off, realizing that they're ones we often speak of and again speak to what we're trying to get our students to do, but they equally apply to higher education leadership. Without inspiring your team, your staff, your members with a curiosity, with a lifelong approach to learning, no higher education international association is going to do well. An innovation mindset would be something else. I know at NAFSA, it was just adapting through the pandemic, adapting through the in-persons, the virtuals, the hybrids, all of the different dynamics that many others on this call have experienced. That required an innovative mindset. Moving forward in resource-constrained environments, innovation will be key. Creativity will be key. I will say, and maybe I'll leave it here, Sonia, is that really to be successful as an international education association leader, it's your ability to bring diverse perspectives to the table together, to always consider them to make the best informed decisions. Yeah. Without them, we will not go far. Without being a team player in that respect, we won't go far. So maybe I'll leave it there, and I look forward to hearing what Laverne has to say. Oh, I know you asked me what support do we need? We're a membership organization, right? The more we hear from higher education institution folks on the field, what is going on the ground, what is going on, reminding us what's going on in your country's situation, all of that informs what we do at NAFSA, and I'm sure my colleagues' associations. That way we can be better partners. We will do our job also to stay as informed and better. But the news cycle, as we all know, is so rapid. It's those kinds of touch points that are really good so that we can advocate together for all of us. In terms of government and civil society, in the US, we're a very decentralized education society, so we work through our public policy teams to advocate with colleagues, associations, universities across the board. We don't do anything alone in terms of our advocacy and public policy work. On the global front, we talk to our colleagues like CBIE and others with IEASA in terms of global issues. And I expect the need to do that will continue and to be more important than ever.
Yeah. Thank you, Dorothea. Very great. Laverne.
Thank you, Sonia. So I align with all the adjectives that Dorothea used to describe the leadership that's required. So I might actually repeat some of them, but I think for me, at this point, innovative leadership is really important. Re-examining where we are and actually charting a way forward. Creativity, vitally important. Resilience. We live in a world now where we have waves and waves of challenges, and we need resilient leadership. We need leadership that's engaged, a listening leader who actually hears what's going on. And I think that engagement is so vitally important, not just with our members, but actually engaging across the world, engaging with civil society, engaging with government. So that's very important. I think being people-centered, very important as well, because this is all about, I always say internationalization, when all the credits and all the mobility numbers are accounted, is really a contribution to the broader human project. It's about shaping a new world, a better world. So being people-centered is very important. I think having an entrepreneurial spirit is very important in any organization now, not just for the sustainability of the organization, but also about building pathways that actually are not just for the short term, but actually move into the future. And so I come to the next description, and that's visionary leadership. Leadership that is not just looking at the now, but looking at the way forward. And I love the African proverb that says, the wise woman plants a tree that she knows she will never sit under. So a visionary leader also prepares for a future that they may not be part of, but becomes part of their legacy. So I think that collective, it's when you look at it between Dorothea and I, it's actually a pretty high demand, expectation for a leader. But unfortunately, that is what the expectation is these days. What type of support do we need from government? Well, in the South African context, I think it's about an openness to engage. We have just had a change in government, and we rely on government departments for everything from the issuing of visas timelessly to working with departments like science and technology and the different bilaterals that they have, international relations and cooperation, and mirroring the different engagements we have with countries. For example, part of South African government policy is to look at Southern Africa and the rest of Africa as a priority, then to look at BRICS and to look at the global South, and of course not ignoring the long-standing partnerships we've had in the global North. But I think funding also becomes important for organizations, and international organizations or associations that have government funding, I think always have a little bit of an edge in what they can do. And in South Africa, we have not had that, but it's certainly something that we could benefit from, having a compact with government where an organization like IEASA is able to drive internationalization on the national stage with the resources from the state. Civil society, very important. I think there's a voice that emerges from civil society that we as international education associations have to listen to. I think the issues around social justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, we've got to be working with civil society organizations that have an interest in that type of work. Decolonization that we actually have written about extensively in the IEASA collective is another area where we would want to work with civil society. I think also very important is for us to work with our academic institutions. IEASA is really a volunteer-based organization. It really is, our strength lies in the membership that comes from our academic institutions. So the type of support that we've had over the years and continue to have from our members in these academic institutions is absolutely fundamental to the success of IEASA. So that relationship has to be one that is built. The leadership of IEASA comes from our academic institutions largely. I'd like to add one element to this, and that is business, to increasingly work with business. If you go to a NAFSA conference, you see the corporates and the role that they play in international education. And I don't think we can ignore the role that they play, whether they are recruitment organizations, whether they are agencies that facilitate the payment of fees, housing institutions. I think business also plays an important role. So this is a quad helix that comes together: civil society, higher education, government, and the corporate world. I think if we leave out one cog there, then we actually become much weaker, and we have to work together and support each other. So it's not just them supporting us. I think equally we support the universities, we support civil society, we engage with business in ways that make us stronger. And I think a recurring theme is in all of this is the need for us to collaborate and work together, whether it's at a national level or whether it is at a global level.
Thank you so much, Laverne. Both of you have made me think quite a bit, and in particular, I like the fact that you brought up the stakeholders, and in particular in civil society, and sort of broke that out quite a bit more into industry and the corporate sector, as well as we have the not-for-profit sector and community, and a number of different, I guess, stakeholders that are outside of the academic institutions for whom we advocate, right? And they may, yes, those other groups may or may not be actually in-house, or they may not have a way to be a member of or even want to be a member. But I think it's really important to keep that in mind. So I thank you for bringing that up. I myself
add to that.
Yes, please.
I think certainly within the country we have our national government structures, local, regional, the federal or national. But I think we must also look at other governance structures like the United Nations, for example, and the role that we have to play in their engagement. For example, the Network of International Education Associations drafted a paper that was presented at the UNESCO conference 2 years ago, I think. We have to engage with agencies within the United Nations because engaging with the UN SDGs is so fundamental to what we do in international education. We cannot actually be international educators without looking at those grand global challenges and how we work at them collaboratively. So, in addition to government within countries, I think working with government type structures beyond the national is also important. And, I'm citing the United Nations as one of the organizations that would be important for us to engage with.
Yeah, Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we do have some of the leaders or former leaders of different organizations that are some more engaged or have become more engaged at the UN. It does seem to be, whether it's with UNESCO or other areas, Francisco Marmolejo and Darla Deerdorf come to mind. So there is a natural inclination or a fit for this area. I was going to say I'm myself I'm the chair of the board for International Education Newfoundland Labrador, but we're a very small player, and we would look to the Canadian Bureau for International Education in Canada as our sort of overarching supports. But I know Vinita being on the CBIE board, and I know she gave the initial talk, but I wondered about her and Sean Manley, who is also here, who leads CONAHEC. I wondered if you had any other or extra thoughts about that last question. In particular, what kinds of support would you see for what resonated with you, and what did you hear from Dorothea and Laverne that might resonate with either CONAHEC or the Canadian Bureau for International Education? So I wonder if either or both of you might come on and share a little bit more from a couple other perspectives. Yes, no, maybe there. Sean's there. Yay. You're on mute, Sean. Thank you. Oh, you're still on mute. How weird. Just a second. Let me see. Arif, is there some permission maybe that we need to give Sean so that he can speak?
He should be able to. I have enabled him and made him a presenter as well. Should be able to talk.
Yeah. Yeah. No, still on mute. That's so weird. Yeah, no worries. And Vinita might be busy, so maybe we'll just go into some of our questions, and we'll continue to hope that Sean might be able to come on. Dorothea, you're on.
I was just going to mention, Sonia, too, the list of skills or attributes we think that are important for international education leadership may seem long, may seem daunting. However, if this field cannot do it, I do not think there is any other field that is better equipped to take on these challenges. And I truly believe that. And I think this is the time for us to really be able to employ them and articulate them and be willing to be creative about how to use them and with whom to engage them in more than ever. And so I just wanted to say that in terms of being hopeful about our future.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yes, thank you. Vinita, I saw you on briefly. Did you have anything to add?
Thanks, Sonia. Can you reframe the question for me? I heard some bits of it.
Yeah. So what kinds of support do these higher ed or organizations need from the academic institutions, from the government, and from civil society, with that large range that we discussed, from community to corporate to NGO?
I think, well, first of all, I think with institutions, I think some institutions, at least in the Canadian context, some institutions feel they can go at it alone, right? And some institutions have the years of government or business or civil society because of their reputation or their ranking, whatever the case might be, or they're, well established, and they have the year of the government directly. But that wouldn't be the case for all institutions. All the institutions don't have the same kind of resources either to lobby the government in ways in which, that's become a practice in the sector. So I think it's important that institutions, and especially the elite institutions, recognize the role that they play in a collective advocacy and joining the IHE and supporting by way of membership. And I think with governments, there isn't always the recognition of the expertise or the role that these IHEs play. And so I think it's important to sort of bring awareness to both the public and, you know, I was just reading a PI note that someone summarized where they said, you know, we thought international students are important, institutions thought they were important, but we never brought the public along with the sentiment around international students and their importance to the nation, not just institutions and fiscal roles that they play, but in fact, the impact international students have on our countries and our society. So I think, you know, we probably need to tie those two together and for IHE to be relevant to the changing needs of the institution.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm sorry that we haven't been able to get Sean unmuted. It would have been great to hear from you, but if at any time over the next little bit we find a way, we will definitely have you come on. We have a couple of questions from Fazela Hanif. Fazela, it would be great if you could actually come on screen and ask your questions of our panelists in person. Again, we will see if you are able to do that. Arif, are you able to unmute Fazela?
I have made her a presenter, so she should be able to speak.
Okay.
But she
Still
has to unmute
unmute
herself.
Yeah. Let's see if you can do that. Great to see you,
Hello,
Fazela.
everyone. Hello, everyone. Hi, Sonia.
Hi.
I missed our dosas in Durban.
I know.
Great. Yes, I think the challenge that I have with our internationalization, I know there are many things and many forms, organizations in South Africa and the Global South are trying to make use of internationalization in such a way that it benefits their universities and their student population. The challenge I have still is that North America and Europe dominates the financial purse of many of these even South-South collaborations. And so we look at the situation of xenophobia, which is, percolating in South Africa again, and looking at what are we doing? I mean, in the sense of there is a blatant situation that's happening in Gaza that we are silent about. We might say a few things about it, but there's no action about it. And so what happens when we see a nation where their universities have been annihilated and their academia has been annihilated and we're silent? And we're trying to purport to be a global organizations or are concerned about global issues. So I think we need to preach what, to live what we preach. And I don't see that we're doing that as a global community in higher education. And that speaks to the sense of even we look at in Africa, what's happening in Sudan. So it's really not just about what's happening in the Middle East, but really about how we are silent about what's happening. And I think Laverne mentioned a little bit about the geopolitical landscape for which we are, I guess, challenged about how we do that without upsetting the financial purses of internationalization. So I think it's a deeper question. Just we can say we can just boycott, but it's not as simple as that. It's how we respect each other in that space. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fazela. And Laverne, I know that you and Samia wrote an article in University World News recently, and you mentioned differing opinions around Gaza and Palestine in particular. Do you have any comments on Fazela's comments?
Yes, I think Fazila makes a very, very important point. And I think in South Africa, our government have taken a rather brave stance of potentially, um, displeasing the holders of the purse strings. They've taken a stance which is very much about human rights and protecting human dignity, and they've taken it through official channels that are available, through multilateral organizations. So, but I do agree there is a lot of silence, around human rights issues. And international education is about promoting this better world and making these strong statements. IEASA as an organization also did that in issuing a strong statement on some of the prevalent issues. But like Fazila states, there are so many of them in the world at the moment, and we're not able to actually keep pace with following all of them. There are human rights violations in so many different parts of the world, some in open view, and we see it on our television screens, some of it hidden, issues like human trafficking that is so rife in the world. But there are many of these issues that receive little to no comment, little to no action. And I think in some ways we are very limited in what we can do outside, government. And in South Africa, we've been fortunate in having government step in and take on that broader role that an organization like IEASA is not able to.
Thank you, Laverne. Dorothea.
Sorry, had to find my button. Following Laverne, with whom I agree with just about all of the time, is always a challenge, but I do absolutely concur with how we articulate the challenges we face as international education associations. And as I mentioned before, how different we may all be in structure and membership base and political context. It is going to be a continued challenge for us moving forward in terms of using our voice, when to use our voice, how to use our voice, how to respond to our members' interests, and in a news cycle that is changing hour by hour. It is something that I really take great pleasure in being part of the network of international education associations, as Laverne has mentioned and is chairing, so that we can have these rich conversations with colleagues and understand the different contexts from where we're coming and what people's personal opinions may be, what they feel organizationally can do. And we will continue to have them. And as long as we have them, I feel that we will continue to pursue the greater good going forward to the best that we can. Being interrogated by members and others in the community is always helpful for us to be able to know and how to articulate things, but also to know that just as soon as that, we're getting hit on other kinds of issues. And it is a lot to manage sometimes, but the challenge we're up for, we continue to, as I've mentioned, really seek global voices and continue to do better and to really be part of living and preaching and living the values that we espouse upon.
Yeah. Thank you, Dorothea. Vinita, I see your camera on. I just wondered if you had anything to add. I know that we've also talked about this in the Canadian context.
I think, personally, I agree with the responses that you've already heard from my colleagues. And I think, I understand and appreciate the challenges that member-based organizations also have in being able to respond to these. But I think what I find sometimes problematic is the uneven response that the international higher education themselves have with respect to global crises and conflict. And we've definitely seen that within our own organizations here in Canada.
Yeah. And I think, you know, like from the Canadian perspective, what we've seen is unevenness in how the institutions are also, and of course, these organizations represent their institutions. We have seen in Canada some discussion around how the universities are just neutral. They're the neutral culture, and so we don't have to, you know, they shouldn't be taking a stance. And it kind of is interesting to me. I grew up on Bishop's campus, Bishop's University in southern Quebec, Anglican University. Many of our universities across Canada, if you look at Nova Scotia, and I don't know the West as well, but you know, they were set up as either Catholic universities or Anglican universities or some other type of Protestant universities. So I think the idea that we can go back to our foundations and find some sort of neutrality is disingenuous. We can't. Our institutions, and there, anybody who knows anything about organizational culture, there's no neutrality there. So trying to lean on that, you know, academic freedom and neutrality, I think is really challenging. But we are, again, you know, membership-based institutions, and we're there to represent the institutions that are within our jurisdiction, and so that also probably leads to that some of that unevenness, Vinita, that you've noticed. Anyone else have anything to add to that question?
Sonia, perhaps I'll add this to say that I think we live in a very unique moment where the role that we have as international education associations, and that includes our members, is quite special in terms of being bridges within society. I don't think we can rely on governments completely to keep these relationships going. And I think we have an important role as international education associations in being these bridges. We see governments change in different countries. We see some trends within countries that actually are quite unthinkable. We see the rise of nationalism, the extreme right in countries that we would never have thought would have been part of it. We see democracy being challenged in different parts of the world. So the traditional links that were government to government, I think now to some extent fall to us to maintain a people-to-people engagement, keeping that alive during these challenging times. And I think that role that we have as bridges in society is an important one for us to examine and to take seriously.
Yeah, thank you, Laverne. Jenna, I know that your question was somewhere along the same lines, but I wonder if you would come on anyway and just maybe talk to us a little bit. I believe you're from the UK also, so you might have some other interesting perspectives to share. So wondering if you would mind coming on to share your question. Oh, you're in a coffee shop. Okay, well, I will read your question for you, Jenna. No worries. Thank you for saying that. So Jenna, from the UK perspective, is noticing that that there are differences as well in how the different member organizations globally have taken their approach to speaking out against, for example, genocide in Gaza. And how do these major organizations see that intersection of their global vision with speaking out against global violence?
Well, let me attempt to answer that. I think the diversity that we have within the network of international education associations is one that we acknowledge and we respect. Our perspectives are different, our circumstances are different, our contexts are different. So I think each organization is in a different position in terms of how to respond. Depending on their constitution, their governance, their membership, the political situation that they find themselves in. and also the diversity of views that might exist within an organization. So yes, there is this huge diversity. I don't think it is something that we can actually take on and find consensus on every issue. We do discuss it and we find consensus in some areas. And in some instances, we do have consensus around the table, but it's not necessarily done in a public space. Some organizations are in a position to make a public statement, others are not. So, yeah, I acknowledge everything that Jenna says, and I don't think that we will reach a position where, as international education associations, we agree on everything, take the same position on everything, and respond in the same way to everything. But within that diversity is also strength, because there's a commitment within our network to continue to work together, to continue to be persuaded, to continue to listen to each other, and to continue to collaborate.
Yeah. Thank you, Laverne. Dorothea, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I thank Laverne for his response, and thank you to Jenna for posing the question, and absolutely agree with all of that. I do think that one of the benefits of being in this field, as I've been for most of my career, is just the implicit commitment to a greater global good. Does that mean we're all going to agree and see the same path of that? No, but that we can sit around the table and have these discussions in very challenging times, fraught with lots of political and other consequences, to continue to have them, to have dialogue for each other, to have them, and then to represent our members and the greater community at large to the best of our ability at any moment in time.
Yeah.
And I also see where Arif had sent a question related to Sonia, if I may, related to tips for aspiring leaders in international higher education. And what drew me to that is, at the same time, we're also beholden to providing opportunities for our members and helping to develop and cultivate the next crop of leaders of the field, right? And so where do organizations spend their time? How do they do that? How do they provide without frustrating aspiring individuals to enter this field? That is something we think about all of the time. We talked about the skill sets that we feel valuable to be successful in international education, higher leadership. I would say they all are absolutely applicable to skill sets for anyone on this call or any of your students or other colleagues with whom you're working to develop in the future. The world needs that. The world needs you. The world needs our students to come away with these skills, and not only the skills, the ability to articulate them and the importance of them to our external stakeholders. We do a good job at talking to each other about, oh, we should be resilient, we should be this. How do we articulate those skills, the value of them, to students seeking new careers, to employing with businesses, engaging with government leaders who are determining funding or not? I think that's where the articulation of skill sets is something we can do better with as a community.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dorothea. And Laverne, you also in your role are able to spend time with senior international leaders from across South Africa and around the world. What are some of your thoughts around, if somebody is on this call and they are aspiring to become a leader, either in their institution or to take part in one of these global organizations? What do they need to know, and what skills do they need to develop?
Okay, so for me, it's an interesting question, because generally none of us start studying international higher education as our primary qualification. We all start in different fields, and I think developing leadership within your field is one of the ways you can do it. I think working within, in South Africa, we have what's called the critical crossfield outcomes. But, these are the soft skills that are so important. The ability to communicate effectively, listening skills, the ability to work within a group, the ability to look at a challenge and find a way forward and build consensus. These are some of the very basic skills that are essential that will take you into a leadership role. I often look at international education as one of our most potent vehicles to shape a new generation of leaders. And I think we all agree that we have a dearth of leadership in the world. If you look at the type of political leadership we have, the type of leadership that we have in business communities, the type of utterances we see on social media leave a lot to be desired. We have an important role in shaping these leaders. And not everyone needs to be a Nelson Mandela or a Bishop Tutu or a Mother Teresa. We need leadership at every level and sphere of society. We need the school principal who is the leader not just within the school, but actually reshapes the community around the school. The nurse practitioner who doesn't work just on the health of the individual, but the health of the community. The medical scientist who works in a laboratory that actually changes the lives of millions of people through creativity and innovation. So I think we should be looking at leadership far more broadly than just what we could do within international higher education. And I think in all of that, those soft skills are vitally important. And of course, then there are those discipline-specific skills in each of the different professions or disciplines that are also needed. I started life out as a dental surgeon working in the area of oral medicine. And I often joke that I was trained to build bridges in the mouths of my patients as a clinician. Today, I also build bridges in society. So you can also use where you come from in unique ways to contribute in more broadly, but use where you are currently to build a platform of skills that you can take into the next phase of your career.
I love that. I really love how you said, to become a leader in your own discipline. Because you're right, we're all in academia. We all did some sort of degree in order to get our job at our university, and that degree is so varied. And so I think that that's really important. And Kate just said, Kate, do you want to come on actually and just respond? If Arif can help you out. Oh, okay. No worries, Kate. She's echoing Laverne and suggesting having multiple communities of practice. And that's certainly a really important piece. And they can be formal or informal. Kate and I are on, and Vinita actually are on a sort of an informal community of practice of some SIOs across the country. We know each other. We can quickly, ask a question and get a response. And those are really key. And then sometimes these are more formal communities of practice, maybe developed through NAFSA or IEASA or CBIE. Vinita, do you want to share your response?
It's in the chat, and so I'll just keep it brief, I guess. But I do think together we're stronger. It just resonates all around for me, because I think we just need to connect with people and share perspectives, and not to go at these difficult issues alone, and to really be open to multiple perspectives. I think what I've noticed is as the issues have become more complicated, people listen to less and less people.
Yeah.
It just becomes, and you only hear from those who share your own point of view, or or very similar point of view. And I think this echo chamber has to really go. And it's really hard in academia, because our foundation is supposed to be about dialogue and conversation, and that just seems to be stifled in academia so much right now.
Thank you, Vinita. And I see that we have only 5 minutes left, and I should be inviting Dr. Melissa Watley to come online and share some final comments. But first, before we pass it over to Melissa, I just wanted to say thank you so much to Vinita, to Dorothea, to Laverne, to Celso, who couldn't make it, and in particular to Arif for pulling this all together and getting us all excited and engaged, and for having this really incredible conversation today. I've learned a lot and have really appreciated it. So, Dr. Watley, over to you.
Thank you so much. And I'll offer also thanks to you, Sonia, for moderating such a fantastic panel. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to Vinita for the opening remarks. And I want to especially extend a special thanks to Ari for organizing this event. He is really the backbone behind what we do here with this series. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Critical Internationalization Studies Review, but really Ari does the work to make these events happen. And they are always exceptional events and interesting conversations. I'll also thank our audience for being here with us. It's wonderful to see so many people tune in for these events. I want to just take a couple minutes to share some resources with everyone who is here before we close things out. First, I will put the link to the Critical Internationalization Studies Review in the chat. We are accepting submissions for our first issue of the academic year, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, which we'll be publishing in September. Please consider sending us your work. And then if you are not already subscribed to our network newsletter, I'll put the link in the chat as well to sign up to receive announcements and resources from the network. The next episode of Leadership Under Fire will be in October. It will bring together deans of students from various parts of the world. Signing up for our newsletter is a great way to learn more information about that event, specifics about when it will happen, who will be serving on the panel, and those sorts of things. So we hope that you will join us for next time. Again, thank you all so much for being here today. This was a fantastic conversation to listen in on, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.